When you hear the name Rolex, what pops into your head? You almost certainly think of luxury, absolute precision, and, well, immense wealth. But in this explainer, we're going to completely flip how you look at this iconic brand. We are not just going to talk about Rolex as a watchmaker. Instead, we're going to unpack how Rolex is actually the ultimate blueprint for modern marketing genius. I am so excited to guide you through this, because the strategies we're about to uncover, they are absolutely legendary.
Okay, let's dive right into this. $100 billion. Let that sink in. That is the estimated upper valuation of the Rolex brand today. I mean, they generate over 10 billion Swiss francs annually and manufacture over 1 million watches a year. It's an absolute titan of industry, a symbol of ultimate achievement that has just completely conquered the luxury market.
But you know what brilliantly illustrates the magic of this brand? It's the stark juxtaposition of that $100 billion valuation with its devastatingly humble beginnings. Because Rolex didn't start in some shiny corporate boardroom. It started with Hans Wilsdorf. Back in 1893 in Bavaria, Hans was just a 12-year-old boy who lost both of his parents in the span of 18 months. His extended family stepped in, sold off the family's multi-generational iron tools business, locked all the money in a trust that he couldn't touch, and then just shipped him off to boarding school. He was entirely alone.
So the absolutely crucial point we're going to explore today is this exact question. How did a destitute boy with zero connections, no safety net, and literally no money build the ultimate marketing masterclass? We're going to look past the gears, the dials, and the luxury status, and really break down Wilsdorf's unmatched visionary playbook that, quite frankly, created the modern watch industry.
So, let's get into Act 1, the branding play. Before he was a titan, Wilsdorf was really just a young guy trying to figure out how to stand out in an industry completely dominated by anonymous, white-label watch importers. And looking back at his incredibly tough childhood, he made a pretty profound realization. Being stripped of his security and sent to a boarding school where he was teased as an outsider, that could have easily broken him. But instead it forged this absolutely relentless independence and an audacious confidence. He just poured his grief right into his studies, became fluent in 3 languages, and learned to rely on absolutely no one but himself.
And it was exactly that self-reliance that gave him the courage to make a massive, totally contrarian bet. Now picture this. In the early 1900s, the pocket watch was the undisputed king of timekeeping. It was masculine, sophisticated, the ultimate status symbol. Meanwhile, the wristwatch, which was often mockingly called a wristlet, was considered a complete joke by the industry. It was seen as a fragile, feminine jewelry accessory. People genuinely thought a movement that small could never be accurate and would literally just shatter from the swinging of an arm. But Wilsdorf? He looked at those tiny movements and, against the ridicule of the entire establishment, bet his whole future on them.
So by 1905, Wilsdorf had moved to London and started an importing business. But he knew pretty quickly that simply putting movements in the cases for other jewelers to stamp their names on just wasn't going to cut it. He needed his own brand. And to get there, he practically invented the perfect brand name playbook. He wanted a word that was short, memorable, melodic, easy to say across any European language, impossible to misspell, and, this is key, compact enough to look really elegant right there on a watch dial.
He completely obsessed over this. He was combining letters endlessly, yielding hundreds of names that just didn't feel quite right. And then, the story goes that in 1908, while he was riding a horse-drawn double-decker bus through London, Wilsdorf claimed a good genie whispered a word right into his ear: Rolex. Now, the word meant absolutely nothing, but it was powerful, it was catchy, and it perfectly hit every single one of his criteria.
Moving right along to Act 2, the validation play.
Now, a great brand name means exactly nothing if no one trusts the actual product, right? Wilsdorf knew he had to totally obliterate the myth that wristwatches were just fragile toys. And his solution? It was astonishing. 1 single second. In 1914, Wilsdorf did the unthinkable. He submitted a tiny Rolex wristwatch to the Kew Observatory in Great Britain. Now, this was the grueling testing ground for marine chronometers that the Royal Navy used to navigate the oceans. No one had ever submitted a wristwatch before. There was just no way it would pass. But after 45 days of intense testing in extreme temperatures and positions, the Rolex actually passed with a Class A certificate. It recorded an average daily deviation of just 1 second. He proved unequivocally that his watch could rival the absolute finest navigational instruments on Earth.
But you know, the ultimate real-world validation came from a much, much darker place. Just 13 days after that Q certification, World War I broke out.
And in those chaotic, muddy trenches, soldiers needed to synchronize creeping artillery barrages with their advances. Fumbling around for a pocket watch? That was literally a death sentence. They desperately needed hands-free timekeeping. So practically overnight, the wristwatch became a military necessity. It was even ranked ahead of a revolver in a 1916 officer's handbook. When those battle-hardened soldiers finally came home in 1918, that old feminine stigma was completely dead. By the 1930s, wristwatches were outselling pocket watches 50-1. Wilsdorf's massive gamble had officially paid off.
But, of course, success brought incredible new challenges. Most notably, a staggering 33% customs duty imposed by the British government on imported luxury goods in 1915, which, unfortunately, included watches. For a company importing Swiss movements into London, this could have been entirely fatal. Plus, Wilsdorf had a very distinctly German name during a time of really intense anti-German sentiment. So, with ruthless strategic clarity, he just uprooted his thriving London operation and relocated Rolex entirely to Geneva, Switzerland, which is exactly where it remains to this day.
Okay, let's look at Act 3, the influencer play. So, once he was settled in Geneva, Wilsdorf realized wristwatches still had one fatal flaw. They were constantly exposed to rain, dust, and sweat, which easily destroyed those delicate little movements inside. He spent over a decade utterly obsessed with fixing this, and that resulted in the 1926 Oyster case revolution. He developed this brilliant three-piece design. It featured a screw-down bezel, a screw-down caseback, and a patented screw-down crown that completely sealed the winding mechanism. It was hermetically sealed against the elements, literally, just like an oyster. But here's the thing. In the 1920s, if you just walked up and told people your watch was waterproof, they'd laugh right in your face. You needed dramatic proof. Enter a young British swimmer named Mercedes Gleitz. In 1927, her record-setting swim across the English Channel was actually called into question by a fraudster. So she decided to do a vindication swim in freezing waters just to prove her critics wrong. Wilsdorf saw this and recognized the ultimate marketing opportunity. He asked her to wear a Rolex Oyster on a ribbon right around her neck during the swim. After more than 10 hours in freezing, brutal seawater, Gleitz eventually had to be pulled out. But the Rolex around her neck? Still ticking flawlessly. Wilsdorf immediately bought the front page of the Daily Mail to announce this wonder watch to the whole world.
So the crucial point we can take away here is this. Wilsdorf essentially invented what Rolex calls the testimony, their foundational concept of a brand ambassador. With Mercedes Gleitz, he practically wrote the modern playbook for influencer marketing, and he did it nearly 90 years before Instagram even existed. He proved that you don't just sell the product's features, you associate the product with extraordinary human achievement.
And that brings us to our final chapter, Act 4, the legacy play. Now, Wilsdorf was a master marketer, yes, for sure. But how he shaped the actual corporate structure and the underlying ethos of Rolex is perhaps his greatest masterstroke of all. Throughout his life, he maintained this profound sense of humanity, which was very likely born from his own difficult youth. During World War II, British officers loved their Rolexes so much that they bought them with their own personal money. But when they were captured and sent to POW camps, German guards would confiscate the watches as trophies. When Wilsdorf heard about this, he actually offered to send brand new replacement watches straight to the camps, and he asked for payment only after the war ended, based entirely on their honor. I mean, it's just an unbelievable demonstration of building lifelong brand loyalty through genuine, deep empathy. And that phenomenal marketing was always backed up by relentless, peerless innovation. During Rolex's post-war golden age, the breakthroughs were just non-stop. In 1945, they launched the Datejust. In 1953, the Submariner, making history for deep-sea divers. Then the GMT Master for pilots traversing time zones, and the Day-Date for world leaders. Wilsdorf proved that the greatest marketing in the world absolutely cannot sustain a mediocre product. Every single piece was an innovation built on that waterproof Oyster case and the revolutionary self-winding perpetual movement.
This dual obsession, this unmatched marketing theater paired with absolute product perfection, resulted in staggering market dominance. Today, Rolex commands roughly 32% of the entire Swiss luxury watch market. To put that into perspective for you, they outsell the next 5 largest Swiss brands combined. They are entirely in a league of their own.
But the ultimate legacy play came in the wake of a really profound personal tragedy. In 1944, Wilsdorf's beloved wife passed away. He found himself a widower, with no children, controlling one of the most valuable companies in Switzerland. To protect everything he had built, he did something completely unprecedented. He created the Hans Wilsdorf Foundation and transferred 100% of his ownership straight into it. And what this means is that Rolex can never be bought out by some massive luxury conglomerate. It never has to answer to Wall Street, and it never has to chase quarterly earnings. It just perpetually builds the finest watches in the world, all while quietly donating over 100 million Swiss francs to charity every single year.
Which really brings us to our final lingering thought. Because you see, the story of Rolex isn't just about watches. It's about an orphan who took the profound loneliness, grief, and abandonment of his youth and let it forge an unbreakable self-reliance and audacity. He proved that where you start doesn't have to dictate where you finish. The adversity that seems designed to break you might just be the exact fire required to forge your own extraordinary success. So I'll leave you with this. What adversity in your life is actually the forge for your own success? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you on the next one.